Uncover 7 spine-chilling law enforcement cases. Terrifying truths exposed from the haunted files. The moon hung low in the sky, as if it were a watchful eye, framing the quaint suburban streets of Maplewood in an eerie glow. This evening felt different as Amelia pulled into her driveway after another grueling shift at the hospital. She stepped out of her car and glanced at her neighbor's house. The back porch light flickered ominously, casting twisted shadows on the grass. A shiver crawled up her spine. Something wasn't right. As she fumbled for her keys, distant whispers threaded the air. Were they real, or just her imagination? The constant hum of crickets was absent tonight. She hurried inside, cradling her sleeping children, Ella and Ben, unaware of the storm brewing beyond their peaceful walls. The scoop of her day faded, replaced by a hollow dread that gripped her heart. At that moment, a shrill ring punctuated the silence. An unknown number. No one she knew. The static silence felt predatory. Hours passed. Shadows stalked Amelia's thoughts, growing more sinister with every beat of her anxious heart. She shook it off, tried to close her eyes, but that hook in her gut wouldn't let go. When her son, Ben, burst into her room, a phone in hand, face pale as a ghost, she froze. "Mom, look at this." He pointed to a chat thread about a series of missing persons tied to an abandoned police precinct not far from their neighborhood. "They say it's haunted," Ben whispered. "People said the precinct hid the truth, and those who went in never came out. It's cursed, Mom." Amelia felt a rush of adrenaline. Panic surged through her as she realized how many strange happenings had unfolded around them, people vanishing in the night, odd noises echoing through their peaceful streets. Turning the thread in her hands, her mind raced. Enough was enough. She couldn't ignore this any longer. With each scroll, her heart thundered louder. She pulled Ben closer. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Ignoring the police's dismissal of her fears felt like a gamble, but Amelia was resolute. Her instincts screamed the truth lay deeper. She dug further, uncovering a connection between the trusted school librarian, Miss Henderson, and the long-forgotten precinct. Her heart thudded against her ribs. Their planned confrontation loomed, a dark undertow communicating implicit danger. In the stillness of that night, as she and the kids ventured toward the precinct, her pulse quickened, chest tight. The building loomed ahead, a spectral silhouette against the twilight sky. Each step felt like wading into a murky abyss, shadows shifting and merging like phantoms whose touch felt just out of reach. Inside, the air thickened, rife with chilling whispers as they crawled through the desolate hallways. Memories clawed at Amelia's mind, dredging up things better left buried. A question lingered, echoing in her thoughts. What dark truth connected her to the precinct? Suddenly, her phone rang again, shattering the suffocating silence. Her fingers trembled as she answered. The call ended before she could speak. All she heard was her heartbeat, an ominous harbinger of the horror yet to unfurl, reminding her that the real nightmare had only just begun. The precinct loomed over them, suffocating silence wrapping around Amelia and her children like a thick fog. Each creak of the floor echoed with a haunting finality, a reminder of the stories trapped within the walls. Ben's fingers clutched his mother's sweater tightly, trembling as they stepped further inside. Moonlight slanted through grimy windows, spotlighting dust motes swirling like lost souls. "Mom, this isn't right?" he whispered, his voice barely carrying over the oppressive quiet. Amelia felt icy dread grip her heart. "Stay close," she instructed, though the command felt hollow. They moved deeper into the building, the air feeling heavier, as if the very walls desired to swallow them whole. She paused at a cracked door, its paint peeling like dead skin. A flicker of movement caught her eye, and she turned sharply, but it was only the shadows dancing in the slight breeze. With a deep breath, She pushed the door open. The room inside was a graveyard of forgotten memories, scattered reports, and old papers that crumbled as she touched them. "Mom, look." Ben's voice tremored as he pointed toward a faded bulletin board plastered with missing persons' faces, all smiles, captured moments frozen in time. She felt cold sweat trickle down her back as recognition washed over her. One face, pale and smiling, stared back at her. It was Miss Henderson, the librarian. Her heart slammed against her ribcage. How is she connected? Amelia muttered, her breath hitching as the realization struck her. The clerk had always seemed too invested in the children's welfare, too eager to know about them. As they stood in silence, the air thickened. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating with dark energy, and whispers began to thread through the air, a disjointed symphony of sorrow and despair. Amelia's chest tightened. Could this place have truly consumed those it once served? Then suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the hall, snapping her from her thoughts. They startled, exchanging fearful glances before instinctively moving toward the noise. Their footfalls were muted, swallowed by a profound stillness. Another bang, this time louder, reverberated deeper within the precinct. Amelia's heart raced as she motioned for Ben to keep pace. They crept forward, drawn by curiosity and terror in equal measure. Each step felt like wading through molasses, pulling them deeper into the unknown. At last, they reached the source, a rusted metal door, half open, as though it had been left slightly ajar by something or someone. She hesitated, but instinct pushed her forward. Ben squeezed her hand, and they entered together, pushing past the threshold. Inside was a large room cluttered with old metal filing cabinets. Papers shattered underfoot like brittle bones. Scanning the room, Amelia froze. A figure cloaked in shadow stood at the opposite wall, staring vacantly into the darkness. "Who are you?" she dared to ask, her voice trembling. The figure turned, a twisted grin spreading across its face. "Looking for the truth, are we?" The voice was smooth but drenched in malice, echoing deep into her bones. A cold chill rushed through the room as the figure stepped closer, somehow both familiar and terrifying. Amelia's blood ran cold. It was Miss Henderson, but wrong. "Join us," she hissed, and the air shifted, swirling around them, thick with unseen pressure. A guttural scream burst from Ben's lips as the shadow lunged forward, and the lights flickered violently. In that deafening moment, all her questions dissolved in the chaos. Amelia understood she was not merely an observer but had become a part of this ghastly legacy. Just as darkness threatened to consume them, Amelia turned to flee. But could they escape? A deep, ominous growl echoed from the depths of the precinct, asserting that someone or something was deep within the shadows, waiting. In the thickening darkness, a dreadful thought crept into her mind. What if the precinct was only the beginning? What if more horrors awaited them beyond its cursed walls? Amelia's heart raced as she fumbled for the doorway, her thoughts spiraling in a vortex of panic. The twisted figure of Miss Henderson loomed closer, that unsettling grin still plastered across her face. A shiver cascaded down Amelia's spine, raw fear demanding action. "Run!" she shouted, yanking Ben toward the exit. They barreled through the door just as Miss Henderson lunged at them, her shadow stretching grotesquely, as if trying to grab them with dark tendrils. The chill in the air intensified, clawing at their skin. They tore down the corridor, each footstep echoing like a death knell. Amelia's breath came in harsh gasps, her mind racing through escape routes. The precinct felt alive, its walls seeming to groan with malevolent laughter, shaking with every sound of their flight. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging them into near darkness. "Mom!" Ben squealed, despair evident in his voice. "I know. Just keep moving," she urged, gripping his hand tighter. They stumbled into a larger room, the old interrogation chamber. The smell of mildew assaulted their senses, and Amelia's eyes roamed desperately for something to barricade the door. She spotted a heavy table and dragged Ben toward it, shoving it against the door just as she heard a rattling sound from behind. The temperature dropped at that moment, and a whisper trickled through the cracks of the door. "Let us in." The voice was haunting, soft yet pervasive, coming from all directions like a choir of lost souls reaching for them. Amelia pressed her back against the cold wood, trying to muffle the terror curling in her stomach. "Mom!" Ben's voice trembled, but he didn't let go, his eyes wide with confusion and fright. Amelia forced herself to look at him. "Ben, we need to stay calm," she said, though her insides felt like a storm. "We're going to get out of here." The table shuddered violently against the door, followed by a deafening crash. The makeshift barrier splintered under the weight of whatever dark force assaulted them. "Join us," came the whispers again. "You belong with us, Ben. Are you ready?" Amelia whispered urgently as she spotted a narrow window at the far side of the room, inviting yet menacing. It offered a possible escape, but how to get there? She had barely formulated a plan when the door exploded inward, revealing not just Miss Henderson but a swarm of phantoms, their forms a grotesque mass of sorrowful faces, flickering in and out of existence. Ben screamed, and in that moment, all thoughts of safety vanished. Amelia dashed for the window, reaching it just as another wave of darkness surged toward her. With one desperate push, she hoisted Ben up onto the sill, urging him to escape first. "Go, now." But as he scrambled through the opening, she caught a glimpse of the chaos behind him, smiling faces morphing into expressions of anger and despair. They were insatiable and they wanted her. "Mom!" Ben cried from outside, urgency in his tone mixed with undeniable fear. But Amelia hesitated, feeling the suffocating pull of the shadows closing in. "Amelia!" Miss Henderson's voice erupted from the sea of darkness, a predator toying with her prey. "Why deny me what is mine?" Terror twisted in her gut, but the sight of her son, panic-stricken and pleading, tore through the dread that clung to her. She couldn't leave him. Not now. Not ever. Just as Amelia made her choice, everything blurred. Time, sound, and reality twisted around her in an insatiable spiral, pulling her deeper into the nightmare. One final decision loomed as the shadows reached for her. Was the precinct truly a prison, or could it be the key to uncovering even darker secrets? With one last glance at Ben, who was desperately reaching for her, Amelia felt herself slipping. Was she strong enough to break free? Or was this only the start of a deeper horror? Amelia felt the shadows swallow her whole, an icy grip tightening around her heart. The world melted away into darkness, and for a heartbeat, all sound ceased. She could no longer hear Ben's desperate cries. The last flash of light burned in her eyes, then extinguished into an abyss. Suddenly, she was back in the interrogation chamber, the air thick with mildew and despair. But this time, she was no longer just a terrified mother. Something inside her shifted. The whispers burrowed into her mind, coaxing her into understanding. "Join us." The walls pulsed and throbbed, as if alive, a heartbeat echoing in tandem with hers. Everywhere she looked, shadows danced, stretching and weaving narratives of anguish. Faces contorted in eternal despair filled her vision. She wanted to scream, but the air had thickened into a tangible fog that wrapped around her throat. "Amelia!" Ben's voice broke through, trembling, but it felt distant. The panic in her chest flared. "Help me, please." With a determined breath, Amelia pushed through the haze. She was still in the precinct, but it was different. Flickering lights cast sinister shadows in the corners, and she could sense other presences. Each whisper carried a weight of regret, grief. But beneath that eeriness, Amelia felt an odd ripple, an invitation to unlock secrets buried deep within. "Am I dead?" she whispered into the thick air. "Is this what I've become?" Her voice faltered against the oppressive silence, but the phantoms inched closer, inviting and urging her to remember. They drifted toward her, their elongating fingers reaching out like ghostly tendrils, pleading with her to embrace their pain. Then she remembered. Ben, her son. A surge of unyielding love surged through her, and like a flicker of flame against the darkness, it propelled her forward. "I'm coming, Ben," she shouted, her voice breaking the spell. The room shimmered. The shadows contorted as if they were alive, wanting to pull her back into their seductive nightmare. Amelia could almost see the path ahead, the door leading out, the emergency exit, her son waiting on the other side. She pushed through the distorted visions, concentrating on Ben's cries that anchored her to her humanity. "Mom! Mom!" he pleaded, and the anguish in his voice ignited a fire inside her. She tore past the groping fingers of the phantoms. Their whispers turned to anguished roars, screaming her name. "Amelia!" they called, and she could feel their presence entwining her soul, beckoning her to join them in oblivion. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head violently as tears streamed down her face. "I choose life." Amelia spotted the door swinging tantalizingly ajar, shadows swirling around it, as if protecting secrets long buried. She lunged toward it. Each step felt heavy, as if the shadows were threading their cold fingers through her hair, dragging her back. With every ounce of strength, she pushed through. She felt the coolness of the handle bite into her palm and twisted it hard. The door creaked open, revealing a stark world, the hallway beyond illuminated by a pale, flickering light. "Mom! Hurry!" Ben cried again. She stepped through the threshold, just a heartbeat away from Ben, who was backing away from the shadows pressing against the window. As she reached for him, an icy hand seized her ankle, dragging her back. She fell to the ground, desperately clutching the frame with her free hand. "No!" Amelia screamed as she fought against the force pulling her downward. "I want to let go." The phantoms shrieked, their faces twisting in anger and sorrow. The darkness threatened to close in again, the remnants of their wails echoing in her ears. Amelia's heart thudded. If she faltered now, she would lose everything. "Mom!" Ben's voice cut through the noise, bright and clear, summoning every last drop of energy. She bellowed, "I choose my son." With one final pull, Amelia tore herself free, the shadows screaming in protest. She lunged through the doorway, colliding with Ben. The weight of the darkness pressed at her back, but she felt light, as if a weight had been lifted. "Let's go." She pulled him close, clenching his hand tightly. But just as they turned to flee, the door slammed shut behind them, locking away the darkness, though Amelia could still feel the whispers clawing at her mind. "Amelia," it hissed teasingly, fading into the background. "You're not free yet." They stumbled into a corridor, but this one felt different. A chill crept along the walls, and the air thickened like molasses, heavy with the dread of what lay ahead. "Where do we go now?" Ben asked, confusion clouding his young face. Amelia's heart raced. She didn't have an answer. "We find a way out." Then the temperature dropped further. A door at the end of the corridor creaked open, revealing a flicker of light and a shadow dancing just beyond it. As the shadows deepened around them, Amelia felt a gut-wrenching chill. "Mom!" Ben whispered, digging his nails into her arm. Uncertainty danced with terror. What awaited them in that room? As they hesitated, the shadows seemed to swirl closer, tightening their grip around Amelia. The voices returned, more insistent now, promising truths she couldn't fathom. "Join us. Discover your fate." Amelia's breath hitched. What lay ahead was not just an escape but a confrontation with the truth, whatever horror was lurking in that light. "Are you ready?" she whispered to Ben as she took a deep breath. But deep down, she wondered, were they truly prepared for the darkness that awaited? Amelia took a hesitant step forward. The door stood there, cracked open, revealing a chasm of light and shadow that lurked just beyond its threshold. The uneasy dance of brightness echoed like an eerie siren's call, seemingly promising salvation while hiding nightmarish truths. "Don't go too close, Mom." Ben's voice trembled, an urgent whisper that cut through the air like ice. His small frame pressed against the wall. His wide eyes absorbed the wavering light, catching flickers of movement that seemed to crawl like insects. "Stay behind me," Amelia commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Each step toward that light felt like walking through a tangled web of fear, vibrant and alive. As they drew nearer, shadows poured out from the doorway, pooling at their feet and curling upward like seeking hands, eager to pull them back into darkness. The air grew heavy, stifling. She inhaled deeply, tasting the metallic tang of dread on her tongue. "Mom!" Ben whispered again, his breath hitching. Amelia turned back to him, brushing her fingers through his hair, giving him strength through the warmth of her touch. "I won't let anything happen to you," she promised, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. With determination, Amelia reached out and pushed the door the rest of the way open. It creaked ominously, and as she stepped inside, eerie coldness enveloped them like a shroud. The room was cavernous and dim, cluttered with remnants of faded memories caught in the dusty light. Old photographs littered the floor, their edges curling like dying leaves. Faces stared back, young and old, joy mingled with sorrow. A chill slid down Amelia's spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that these were the faces of those who had been lost to the abyss. "Mom!" Ben pulled at her sleeve, his eyes darting around the room. "I don't like this place, stay close," she urged, heart pounding as she squinted into the corners where shadowy figures seemed to linger, just out of her view. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a soft scratching, like nails against wood, creeping from behind a door in the far corner. Amelia's pulse quickened. It felt alive, like something or someone trying to escape. "Amelia," the voice echoed softly, a familiar whisper that curled through the air. She froze at the sound. Couldn't it be possible? "Ben, stay here," she hissed, moving toward the source of the sound. Each step felt weighty, the floor creaking beneath her as if protesting her approach. The scratching continued, persistent and desperate. "Mom!" Ben cried again, panic rising in his voice. But she had to know. Was it an echo of her past? A trick of the shadows? The whispers beckoned her. "Join us." Amelia reached for the handle, the cold metal biting into her palm. Taking a steadying breath, she twisted it open. The door swung wide, revealing a pitch-black space beyond a narrow staircase spiraled down into darkness. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over her. She felt the weight of countless souls, heavy and restless, pressing in on her. "Don't go down there." Ben's voice was frantic now, trembling in fear. But the shadows shifted, swirling around her feet, urging her forward. She felt their pull, as if they wanted to consume her. "Ben," she called, turning back to him, her heart tugging painfully. "What if we find a way out? What if no? Please." He looked up at her, his expression begging her not to do it. "We can't go down there." But something inside Amelia stirred a dark curiosity, an echo of the agony she had fled. The whispers intensified, combining into a chorus that screamed with both urgency and despair. "Join us. You are part of this." The chill swirled around her, melding with the warmth of her son's grip, creating an unbearable tension. She hesitated at the threshold of the abyss, torn between the light of her son and the darkness promising revelations she could barely comprehend. "Mom, please." Ben's voice broke through her thoughts, grounding her. "We need to get out of here. Now." His plea anchored her as the shadows seemed to recoil in annoyance, their whispers fading, as if they knew they had lost a battle for her soul. Amelia nodded slowly, taking a step back, deciding to retreat. "Okay, we'll find another way," she whispered, determination strengthening her resolve. But as she turned away, a rush of wind filled the room, slamming the door shut behind her. The echoes of the past roared back to life, surrounding them, seeping into her skin. "Amelia," a voice hissed, cold and mocking, reverberating off the walls. "You cannot escape your fate." A blinding light erupted from the corner of her eye, and she felt herself being pulled, yanked back toward the door once more. Fear gripped her heart, and Ben was yanked backward too, caught in the terrifying current of unseen hands. "Hang on, Ben," Amelia shouted, her voice laced with panic. As they stumbled together, the shadows morphed into figures, closing in around them, their faces twisted in anger, hunger. "Join us or perish," they shrieked, the air thickening with their wails. Amelia's breath hitched as she pushed Ben behind her, ready to face whatever horror lay ahead. The flickering light offered no comfort now, it was chaos breathing down their necks. "Run," she cried, taking his hand tightly. They dashed down the corridor, the shadows screaming behind, their voices mixing in a cacophony of rage. But a sinister laugh echoed through the hallway. "You can't run from the truth forever." What truth awaited them? Would they find a way out? Or was the darkness too strong? Amelia's heart raced, her mind spinning with dread. As they fled, the question lingered. How long could they escape the horror that loomed just beyond the light? Amelia and Ben sprinted blindly, the oppressive darkness clawing at their backs. The laughter that taunted them reverberated through the air like an unholy melody, echoing off the damp walls, each note a cruel reminder of the fate that awaited them if they failed. "Keep running, Mom." Ben's voice was raw with terror as he stumbled, almost tripping on the uneven floor. Amelia yanked him back upright, her heart racing as she propelled them forward. The shadows swirled closer, flickering around her, teasing at her heels. She glanced behind them, the sight sending icy fingers down her spine. Dark figures gathered in the hallway, their forms indistinct yet threatening, mouths formed into gaping voids, some reaching out as if desperate to grasp them, their intentions clear. "Where do we go?" she shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, but the shadows seemed to loom with endless corridors, each turn snaring them deeper into the evil that thrived within. "Down here." Ben pointed to a narrow side passage, half hidden by thick shadows. Amelia didn't hesitate, guiding him into the cramped space just as a cold gust swept past, rattling the walls behind them. They pressed forward, the air thick with the smell of decay, and Amelia's breath came in quick, shallow gasps as they ducked into a low-hanging archway. The darkness didn't just dim the light, it absorbed it, making the passage feel like a serpentine maw narrowing around them. With each step further inside, the whispers returned, disembodied voices slithering through the uncertainty. "Help us, don't leave, find the truth," the words twisted in her mind, gnawing at her resolve. "Mom, I don't want to listen," Ben cried, clamping his small hands over his ears. "It's too loud." Desperation clutched at Amelia's throat as she caught sight of something ahead, a flicker, a ghostly shimmer chopping through the darkness. "Look," she pointed, feeling the pulse of urgency race through her veins. There's light. Hope ignited momentarily as they raced toward it, but the voices screamed louder, drowning out Ben's frightened whimpers. "You don't belong. Turn back now." A surge of adrenaline propelled Amelia forward, the light growing brighter, almost blinding now. "We have to get to the light," she urged, reaching out as the passage opened into a vast chamber. But just as they stepped into the glow, the ground trembled violently beneath their feet. A low growl filled the air, a menacing sound that felt alive, hungry. The flicker dimmed to near darkness, and suddenly they were ensnared in a web of shadows, struggling against the oppressive force that threatened to overwhelm them. "Mom!" Ben screamed, yanking on her hand. "Help! I can't breathe." She felt his grip tighten, a mixture of fear and resolve igniting her own. Glancing around the chamber, her eyes locked onto a glimmering object in the far corner, a strange mirror, its surface swirling with dark energy. An inexplicable urge lured her toward it, whispering promises of escape. "Please, Ben, just hold on." As Amelia fought against the darkness, desperately dragging her son with her, she felt eyes watching from within the shadows, watching, waiting. With a final shove, they fell through the pulsing light of the portal, and the world shifted violently around them. Suddenly, they tumbled onto a cold, hard surface. They were in a different room, dim yet silent, unlike the suffocating shadows of the hallway. Breathing heavily, Amelia tried to comprehend their new surroundings. But the fear that gripped her heart only intensified as she realized the walls were lined with the same old photographs she had seen before, faces full of haunting sadness peering from their frames. "Mom, it's back," Ben murmured, eyes darting with panic. His small hands trembled while he pointed toward a flickering light above. Amelia's stomach sank. "Ben, this isn't good." Before she could finish, the whispers returned, swirling around them like a storm. "Join us, embrace the truth." Amelia felt her chest tighten as the familiar hissing voice echoed from the dark. "You cannot escape your fate." The truth hung like a noose, taut and unyielding, waiting to pull them back to the darkness. Amelia turned to Ben, who stood frozen, eyes wide with fear. "What do we do now?" Her voice trembled, And then she felt it, the weight of something lurking just beyond the light. A chill pressed against her skin, suffocating. The walls pulsed as if breathing, and Amelia understood. They had only traded one nightmare for another. "Ben," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "We may not be safe yet." As shadows curled in on themselves, the room trembled once more, whispering promises of revelations that would tear apart everything they thought they knew. "Then what are we waiting for?" Ben whispered, trembling. As they stood in the encroaching dark, a sinister truth loomed. What if this time there's no way to escape? With an icy grip of fear settling in, Amelia moved forward, ready to face whatever awaited them in the next darkness. Amelia stepped deeper into the room, her heart hammering in her chest. The flickering light above pulsated like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows that danced against the walls. Each step felt weighted, as if invisible hands were tugging at her from every direction. "Mom, I don't like this place," Ben whispered, his eyes darting around. They were trapped in a cocoon of dread, and the walls pulsed with an energy that felt alive. Amelia felt it too, like a thick fog creeping into her mind, clouding her thoughts with anxiety. "Just stay close," she replied, her voice shaking. She glanced back towards the shadowy entrance but saw nothing but swirling darkness, a terrain she couldn't navigate. Do you think they followed us?" Ben stammered. "Ben," Amelia snapped, trying to slice through the fear gnawing at her insides. "We need to focus." The whispers morphed into a cacophony, mouths voicing their silent screams. "Find us, release us." The voices shot arrows of unease through the corners of her mind. The photographs, those trapped faces, began to shift. Eyes seemed to follow them, mouths moving in a silent harmony of plea. "Please help us," one murmured, eyes glistening with unshed tears. Amelia's stomach churned. She spun around, desperate to escape the suffocating whispers. "We shouldn't be here," she declared, grasping Ben's hand tightly. She felt his warmth, a small comfort against the growing gloom. But the flickering light above them dimmed suddenly, and the temperature dropped. A heavy silence fell, smothering her instincts. She could feel the presence growing closer, looming, breathing. "Mom?" Ben murmured, voice trembling. "What if we can't?" "Shoo!" she hissed, hold tight over his mouth. The shadows writhed, twisting in rippling currents, and Amelia realized it was searching for them, not just looking, but hunting. In the center of the room stood the mirror, shimmering like a dark pool, inviting yet terrifying. It emitted a pulsing energy that tugged at Amelia as if she were a moth drawn to a flame. She stepped closer, mesmerized. "Ben, look at it." "Mom, no." His voice erupted into panic. "Don't go near it." But the mirror whispered too, sweet as honey. "Join us." It enticed her deeper, beckoning Amelia towards secrets that flickered just beneath the surface. "Mom, please." Ben grabbed her arm, but she shook him off. It knows something." Out of nowhere, the room trembled violently again, as if retaliating against their connection with the macabre reflection. Glass shards blinked in her mind, a memory, a warning. "I'll be right here," she promised, though her voice quaked. Now all she could sense was that the mirror was pulling more than light, it was drawing in souls. "Get away from it," Ben screamed. His urgency broke her trance, snapping Amelia back into the tense reality of their predicament. Suddenly, the mirror rippled, showing flashes of grotesque visions of family crumpled over in despair, shadows leeching their forms, souls bursting forth desperate and wailing. A chilling realization sunk in those who looked into it, never returned. "Mom!" Ben cried, realizing the horror. But it was too late. The mirror's influence crackled through her like ice, weaving its dark desire through her veins. Amelia's heart raced, panic clawing at her thoughts. "We have to leave," she shouted, adrenaline surging as she pulled Ben away. They stumbled backward, but the floor began to shift, tilting like a broken ship beneath them. The mirror screamed, a high-pitched wail of fury and desperation. "You are mine!" Panic exploded in Amelia, pulling Ben close as they stumbled back toward the darkened entrance. But the shadows surged forward, cutting off their path, swirling like a tempest. "Mom, what do we do?" Ben begged, eyes wide with terror. They were trapped, surrounded by a storm of darkness, and Amelia could feel their hope slipping away. The shadows closed in tighter, and she realized they weren't just feelings of dread, they were living, breathing beings, looking to reclaim what belonged to them. Suddenly, the space shifted again, the air thickening. Something deeper, stirred out of sight, something that breathed more than fear. Amelia sensed its awakening. It was waiting for them to falter. Ben run. But as they turned, the stifling atmosphere thickened, closing around them like a closing fist. The truth loomed closer than ever, an abyss of despair that threatened to swallow them whole. Mom Bennis' voice echoed, laced with fear that made her heart ache. In that moment, Amelia understood they might have found the way out, but at what cost? As the darkness dove in, despair clawing at their backs, she grasped Ben's hand tightly. What awaited them in the murky unknown? With sweat trickling down her spine, a terrifying realization hit her. What if the way out led them to an even darker fate? What makes the truth more frightening than the shadows they've just escaped? The answers lay beyond the churning darkness. As the true nightmare began to unfold around them, the shadows tightened around Amelia and Ben, twisting and curling like tendrils of smoke, each movement brushing against their skin, chilling them to the bone. Amelia felt a scream building in her throat, desperate to break free, but it was swallowed by the darkness that closed in around them. "Mom, please," Ben cried, his eyes wide, glistening with tears. There was no escape route visible now, just a tightening squeeze of blackness. The faces in the photographs blinked back at her, mouths moving in a silent panic, urging her to flee, to escape the darkness, to escape the mirror. "Ben, I need you to stay still," she gasped. She could barely hear her own thoughts over the shrieking chaos of whispers that echoed all around them. The voices bled together, a relentless storm clamoring for attention. "Help us! Help us!" The cries seemed to claw at her heart, pulling her into their abyss of despair. "Mom, what is happening?" Ben's voice was shaky, cracking with each word. He clutched her hand tighter, grounding her just for a moment, a flicker of reality in the swirling chaos. "Focus on me, focus on my voice," Amelia urged, trying to break through the veil of terror that threatened to engulf them. She took a shaky breath, her instincts screaming that the mirror behind them was the key. But how did one unlock a door that promised such horror? The ground beneath them felt alive, like the heart of a beast stirring. A low growl emerged from the depths of the room, then a low, deep laughter, echoing off the walls. The shadows warped, shifting into grotesque forms that skimmed the edge of her vision, peering at her with hollow eyes. "They were hungry, stay behind me," she yelled, a fierce resolve igniting within her. They spun around, searching for an exit, but every surface seemed to close them in tighter. "Look," Ben pointed a trembling finger toward a break in the shadows. Amelia saw it, a door, almost swallowed by the darkness, its edges flickering like embers. "It's our only chance," she said urgently, dragging Ben with her as the shadows writhed and twisted in protest, clawing at their ankles, desperate to keep them. As they ran for the door, Amelia felt a cold breath on her neck, sending shivers down her spine. Panic mounted, rising like bile. "Hurry! We can't let them." The ground suddenly buckled under them again, tilting violently. They slipped, tumbling to the floor. Darkness rushed forward, encroaching, swallowing the edges of their vision as she screamed, "Grab my hand." Ben clung to her, but the shadows surged, clawing at him with icy fingers. "No, Ben." Amelia's heart dropped as she saw him being pulled away, his grip slipping inch by inch. With a surge of primal instinct, she lunged, grabbing him just in time. Hydrogen suddenly burned in her lungs. She pulled him forward with all her strength. The door loomed closer, bathed in a flicker of light, a lifeline against the churning dark. "Just a little more," she gasped, and they reached the threshold. But the shadows undulated, a torrent of despair thrashing against her efforts, threatening to pull them back. With a final scream of defiance, she threw them both forward into the door, crashing through the barrier of darkness. There was a blinding light, enveloping them in its embrace. But as they tumbled through, a sudden sharp pain sliced through her shoulder, a dark tendril gripping her, grasping tightly. The world spun around them, the light flickering, growing darker. Their chance of escape was within reach, but a force dragged hard at Amelia. Panic clawed at her throat as she saw Ben's fading silhouette ahead, his face contorted in fear. "Mom! Ben!" she shouted, reaching into the light as the darkness twisted its grip. And in that heartbeat, unspeakable dread tightened its hold just as she felt herself slipping back into shadow. The world around them shattered with a loud crack, and everything froze. Was this the end, or merely the beginning of something worse? As shadows loomed, clinging to her, hope flickered like a dying ember. What would happen next as she fought to break free? And what horrifying truths would they uncover if they managed to escape? The world exploded back into existence with a deafening roar. Amelia jolted upright, gasping for air, the sharp taste of fear thick in her throat. The air was different now, cleaner, yet oddly sterile, like they had been thrust into the belly of a beast far removed from the suffocating shadows they had just escaped. Ben lay beside her, his face pale, eyes wide, drinking in the unnatural brightness of their surroundings. "Mom, are we safe?" His voice quivered as he spoke, unsettled by the shift from darkness to blinding light. Amelia shook her head to clear her foggy thoughts. "I think so." Her heart still pounded like a war drum, with every pulse reminding her of the crushing darkness they had just escaped. But where were they now? They found themselves in a room illuminated by stark overhead lights, the walls lined with mirrors, just like the one they had fled. But these mirrors shimmered like fresh ice, the surface so smooth it looked unreal. The air hummed with an eerie silence, broken only by her and Ben's shallow, ragged breaths. "Mom!" Ben's voice trailed off, and she turned to see his gaze locked onto one of the mirrors. As she followed his line of sight, her stomach dropped. In the reflection, where they should be standing, there was only darkness, a swirling abyss alive with shadowy figures writhing beneath the surface, faces contorted in agony. Amelia could see their mouths moving, a silent scream echoing against the glass. The sight made bile rise in her throat. "Don't look," she ordered, but her voice trembled with uncertainty. How was this even possible? The door behind them had closed, sealing them away from whatever had tried to pull them back. Suddenly, the room vibrated with a low hum, and Amelia felt it resonate within her bones. Shadows shifted restlessly, creeping toward them from the edges of the mirrors. They seemed to swirl around the two of them, caressing at first, but then tightening, constricting as if trying to crush the hope left in her heart. "Mom!" Ben's shout startled her. "Something's coming." Amelia whipped her head back to the mirrors. She could see movement now, forms forming out of the blackness, shadowy tendrils clawing for them. The mirror with their reflections had shifted. Now it showed something darker, a terror more horrifying than anything she could imagine. "Stay close," she yelled, her voice barely above a whisper, panic coursing through her veins. She searched the room for a clue, an escape. The mirrors flashed with fleeting images that made her recoil, horrors from her past, nightmares that shouldn't exist. Faces of people she had lost and shadows of regrets rising like smoke. The images twisted and turned, feeding off her despair. "What do we do?" Ben's eyes were wide, reflecting the fear she herself felt. She instinctively reached for him, grounding herself in his presence. Then, a flicker in the corner caught her attention, something skittering along the edges of the room. A door. It was small and unassuming, a mere sliver appearing above the cold marble floor. Amelia felt a sliver of hope ignite in her chest. "Over there, Ben!" she cried, her body moving on instinct, her breath quickening in anticipation. They dashed toward the door, the shadows howling in protest, thrashing like disturbed bees. Cold fingers grazed her again, a sharp tug pulling her backward. She stumbled but regained her footing, yanking Ben along as they sprinted for the exit, their hearts racing in time with the monstrous whispers enveloping them. "Faster!" Amelia urged, adrenaline surging through her, the grotesque forms closing in around them, more vivid and desperate. The door loomed larger as they neared, light brightening at its edges. "No, not again," Ben cried, glancing back. The shadows were a storm of desperation, reaching for him with grasping claws. He was terrified. A loud crash resonated, and the mirrors shattered, shards glinting like daggers. The room shook, threatening to collapse under the weight of the encroaching darkness. With one final burst of energy, Amelia slammed her body against the door and kicked it open just as the swarm of shadows lunged. They fell through the door, tumbling into another world. All at once, silence enveloped them, an oppressing stillness as though they had been sealed away from the chaos. But as Amelia stood, the creeping dread returned. They weren't alone. A presence loomed in this new light, watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike what waited just out of sight. Would it be friend or foe? The tension crackled, thick and heavy like fog, and Amelia could feel it. The next test was upon them. Amelia and Ben found themselves in a dimly lit room, the air cool and still, an unsettling silence wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. It felt strangely different from the darkness they had just escaped. The light illuminated enough space to catch shapes around the edges, and yet the corners remained muffled in shadows, as if holding secrets too poignant to expose. "Mom, what is this place?" Ben's voice wavered, fear still flickering in his eyes, drawing nearer to her side. Amelia scanned the room frantically. It felt like they had entered a place paused in time, almost like the calm before an all-consuming storm. "I don't know," she replied, forcing calm into her tone. "But we need to find a way out." They moved carefully, inching forward, wary of potential threats lingering nearby. The walls were adorned with unfamiliar paintings, eerie landscapes where the colors dripped as if they were weeping. Each brushstroke seemed to mean something, an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. Suddenly, a chuckle danced through the air, curdling Amelia's blood. "You thought the shadows were the worst of it?" The voice echoed, smooth yet sinister, resonating all around them, as if it were coming from the very walls. "Who's there?" she demanded, stepping protectively in front of Ben. A figure emerged from the shadows, his face partially obscured by the gloom. He wore a twisted smile, his eyes gleaming with malevolent delight. "Welcome, welcome to your reckoning. Who are you?" Amelia quaked, her heart drumming violently as she prepared for whatever was to come. "I'm merely a guide," he said, his voice dripping with malice, "to help you find what you're truly seeking, truth or escape." The word truth resonated deep within Amelia, stirring the dread that had been building since they stepped into the precinct. "No, I just want to leave." Yet even as she declared it, the weight of their nightmare clung to her, tempting her with whispers of dark revelations. The figure stepped closer. "Oh, but avoidance only leads to more suffering. The darkness, dear Amelia, doesn't forget easily." A wave of unease rippled through her, and she could feel Ben trembling against her. "Let us go." She found herself shouting, anger flooding through her. "We've seen enough. For everyone you've lost," he continued, ignoring her outburst, "you must face the truth of their stories, or they will forever be trapped." "Stop," Amelia managed, heat rising in her chest, the memories swirling in her mind, the laughter of friends who had vanished, the shadows of family she couldn't save. "I don't want to hear it." But the room vibrated, and the paintings warped, showing flickers of moments long buried, painful memories surfacing in chaotic flashes. She saw faces, familiar yet distorted, their eyes pleading for salvation. Each image felt like a knife twisting in her soul. "Mom!" Ben cried, straining against the waves of emotion crashing over him. "Make it stop." With every painful memory, Amelia felt herself being dragged deeper, memories entwining with a reality she wasn't ready to confront. This was it, the darkness giving way to truths she had been too terrified to accept. "It's not true," she shouted above the cacophony of echoes, but her voice quivered with doubt. Suddenly, a sharp ripple coursed through the memories, fragments slashing through the air, tearing at her mind. "Face them or they will remain," the figure insisted, looming larger, shadows dancing around him in a sinister ballet. Amelia turned, desperation clawing at her heart. "Ben, hold on to me." "Mom," his voice cracked, stricken with trepidation as the shadows began to crawl toward them, shifting with hungry anticipation. With a surge of determination, Amelia pushed against that wall of fear. "I choose to face the truth, but I will not let you take him." Her love for Ben ignited a flame in her chest, illuminating their path through the terror. "Are you willing to risk everything?" the figure asked, his grin widening. The shadows were inching closer, whispering cruel taunts. "You may not leave intact." "I don't care," Amelia screamed defiantly, feeling the weight of her past behind her, echoing in tandem with a truth she finally determined to face. "You can't break us." Then, as shards of memory lunged toward her, she fought against them, urging the images to surface not as torment but a testament to her will. Pain-flickered faces etched in loss, moments of despair, but also flickers of light, her love for Ben, her strength. "Together," she yelled, grasping Ben's hand with fierce resolve. "Together," he echoed, eyes filled with newfound courage. In that shared moment, the figure recoiled, the shadows faltering in the face of their combined strength. "You think you can challenge fate?" he spat, the malice in his voice palpable. "Yes," Amelia declared boldly, the shadows recoiling away. "We are not defined by your darkness." And then, in a surge of fierce determination, Amelia and Ben surged forward, pushing through the remaining darkness, breaking beyond that suffocating weight. As they broke through the shadows' hold, the oppressive silence cracked like thunder. In a blinding flash, the room disappeared, collapsing, folding into itself, leaving behind echoes of what had been. Amelia gasped for breath as they found themselves standing in a familiar place, a sunlit park, the air fresh and alive, laughter echoing in the distance. "Did we make it?" Ben's voice was thin with disbelief. Amelia grasped his hand tighter, hope igniting within her. "I think so." They turned to look behind them. The darkness had receded, and the whispers faded into nothing, finally silenced. But the journey had changed them. Amelia looked at Ben, love and protection flooding her heart. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." "Together," he reaffirmed, a grin breaking through. They turned toward the light of the future, a bond stronger than the shadows that had surrounded them. As they stepped into their new beginning, Amelia sensed the past would always be a part of them. But this story wouldn't end in darkness. It was the dawn of hope, paving the way to new adventures yet to come. So, with renewed strength, they took their first steps forward as the sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating their path and the potential that lay ahead. You need to subscribe now to our channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.